started, sir?
Yes, we are going to start now. Now I invite Professor Nathini sir and ma'am for this wonderful session on psychological well-being of women. I think we have completed 3 sessions, this is the fourth one, and we have received more applicant for this session. So we have split into another day after tomorrow. Also, we are going to conduct the same session for one college. I think because of the ma'am, it's your time. You can continue, ma'am.
Yes. Thank you, Suresh. So am I audible to everybody?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Yes. So as of now, we have 39 participants. Am I correct, Suresh?
I'm 43, ma'am. On the way.
43. Okay, I'm getting okay now 40. I mean, do we wait for 2 minutes for few more, or what do we do?
Ma'am, you can continue, ma'am.
Yeah, because we were supposed to start now 6:30. Okay. Good evening, everybody. I'm happy that we had people whom I know. Varsha Jain says I'm there, and whom I don't know are also there. Few I know. Krishnan is there. Fine. Suresh, initially I would like to thank you. It's this lockdown has really brought in something useful, that we are able to do something productive in spite of being laid back. And this topic that was given to me was psychological well-being and mental health in women. Why do we need to talk on the psychological well-being? Is it so pertinent that women, their psychological well-being is important? Is the primary question that we need to have. Psychological well-being, personally, if you ask me, they say, you need to have a proper relationship with yourself. You need to know who you are. There needs to be a proper relationship with yourself, a positive outlook about you. What do you think of yourself? How you're able to relate to people? How your independence, your autonomy is valued by you, and your personal growth, whatever you're doing. It could be a housewife job, or it could be a student, or whatever. The personal growth in that, and the professional expertise, and more importantly, the purpose of your life. This is what basically they call it as psychological well-being. You all must be knowing this by now. I think all of you being students of psychology, you must be knowing, we call this in two ways. We divide them into two areas. We call it as hedonic and eudaimonic. Like, Karl Roloff said, there are 6 types of 6 factor. Anybody knows what the 6 factors are? Maybe we'll discuss it as we progress. But I just want to ask you, is it so difficult to have a well-being? The psychological well-being is something that it's always there. Why particularly women? Because there are a lot of challenges and rewards, and we need to balance between the two. We're finding it difficult to balance between challenges. At times, the challenge that you face in your professional career could be difficult from the reward that you're expecting. So to have a balance between these two, you need to have a proper well-being. Let us see in this 20 to 25 minutes, how are we going to handle those well-being and what exactly we mean by well-being. Okay, like I told you, there are 2 types. The hedonic type, which you will be knowing, is divided into the affective and the cognitive. In the affective, we have, more of positive, high positive and low negative. Whereas in cognitive, it is your subjective well-being, how good you are at it. But then the 6 factor comes in the other side. The eudaimonic 6 factor comes, it says there is self-acceptance, personal growth, purpose of life. How many of you have identified the purpose of your life? Your ikigai. I think this word is of late becoming very prominent among everybody, not only psychologists. The word ikigai, I just hope today's meeting we will all sit back to identify what is our ikigai. If at all we have some, let's work to nurture it. If we don't have, let's see how we can. Your ikigai is based on, for people, if you don't know, I'm just telling you what you are good at, what you would like to know, what you are paid for, and what the world needs from you. It's your mission, your vision, your vocation, and your profession. Based on all this, your ikigai is your personal growth. Then comes that is your purpose of life. Apart from your personal growth, it is your personal life. When we're talking of self-acceptance, it's yet another question that I'm asking you. Are we accepting ourselves? All of us want to, compare ourselves. If I would ask Suresh, who did better? Did I do better? Was there somebody who did it much better than me? Or do I need to work? Not that I'm talking with, a sense of pride. I'm just giving it as an example. We always like to estimate ourselves by asking, am I good like that person? We are always judging ourselves, or we are striving to prove we are the best at it. So most of the time, we keep working towards, striving towards professionalism or acceptance. Leave alone profession. There is not much of self-acceptance, even when it comes to, um, your your body, yourself, the way you look. We see there is a lot of body shaming happening among women personally. Men, they don't mind. Men, they don't mind if they call fat. They're very happy. They say it's okay. I'm made this way. It's okay. I'm like this. But women take it very personal. Um, I should not become fat. I need to be fair. I need to be good looking. And this lockdown must have created so much of turmoil in women because they couldn't go to the parlor to have their hair dye on or to have an eyebrow or even to go to the gym to keep themselves fit, whatever. There is lack of self acceptance and personal growth. We are finding a lot of difficulty in accepting our personal growth and coming to the purpose of life. We are struggling to find out our ikigai. And then comes the environmental mastery. How am I going to relate to people? How am I talking to people? How am I going to get to understand what is happening in the environment? If you ask me, even this lockdown, are we understanding it clearly what is happening? And what is the autonomy? What is the individuality that I have in me? Who am I? How good am I to everybody? Whatever it is. Then comes my relationship with others. How good am I in handling my relationship with others? Because most of the time I may be thinking that I'm good with people, but are people really considering me good is a question. Am I able to explain to them what I mean without hurting their feeling? That is, your interpersonal relationship starts with, how you're going to handle people and the relationship, without expressing any animosity or arrogance in whatever you're explaining to them. Fine. This psychological well-being, is it born in us? They say it is a state of problems in life. We must have, say, for example, what if I had failed multiple times in an exam? To share an example, I know a gentleman who was a doctor who was failed thoroughly many times by his professors for whatever reason. This I'm talking long back. But then, this person, even when he was in his final year, he had the audacity to have a clinic because he felt he's capable of handling it. Whereas his juniors or his classmates started working and he was still detained. But the resilience that I'm writing to tell here is he developed the subject into him so much that even without, I'm talking some 20-25 years before, even without an X-ray or even without a barium mail test, he was able to tell whether the patient had thyroid or whatever. In those days, we didn't have scan, we didn't have MRI. But that is the resilience that you develop. If a person could develop for his subject, what is the resilience that we are going to have every time we go through a trauma? This 21 days, let's see what resilience we had. I'm talking of the psychological well-being during this 21 days also. And it's going to extend till the 30th. So it's going to be mostly 34, 35 days. But initially it started off very nice. Nice, I can sleep, I can do anything, I'm happy at home. But then as time went along, we started feeling irritated, bored. We did not have the vigor like how we started. Day one, we started, we wanted to cook something. eat special, spread the table, and we had somebody to help us or appreciate us. But then it didn't work for us as it is progressing. But when I say resilience, the more the trauma, the more you develop, you become stronger, that you're able to face it without losing your psychological well-being. And if you recall the first sentence that I said, it is a balance between the challenge and the rewards. We need to face challenges, or we need to challenge our challenges so that we will continue to face it more strongly. Every time you learn to become more stronger, like the waves hitting the shore, we know for sure they're not doing it with a purpose, as we know. But then every time they continue to hit with more resilience. They keep moving more and more because they feel they will be, there is a feeling that this is my purpose of life. The ocean thinks the waves need to touch the shore is the purpose of life, with more resilience. They come with more vigor. So be humans. When we face traumatic incidences, please don't step back. Please don't say, why is this happening to me? Because you're never going to get an answer for that. The why is never going to happen. When you ask this why, your psychological well-being is traumatized. Instead, find out, okay, this is one way where I can handle this problem. So let me find what is the next way that I can handle it. Let me see how I can change myself. For an example, if you go to buy a gold ornament, if you ask the person who made the jewelry, he will tell you he did not get that gold done and he did not give it to you immediately. He had to send through process of hitting it, process of putting it in fire, cleansing it, whatever. So every time it came out better as an ornament. So even diamonds, when they need to be polished, they need to go on and on and on. It needs to go more, it needs to be rubbed every time. Leave alone a diamond. If it is, a sculptor who's sculpting a beautiful idol, every time you need to go through more pain to come out of it. So like every time you go through a pain, you must understand it is just for you to become stronger psychologically. But on the other hand, we also find women losing out, the psychological well-being or the courage, and they land up in depression. They land up in anxiety. They have cardiac issues. They have hypertension. They have diabetes. Today, psychologists, we are winning our bread and butter because every doctor says you are going through stress, so meet a psychologist. Fortunately, for us, it is building on our profession. But for the general public, talking about even for ourselves, we psychologists also go through stress and storm. So we also need to make ourselves resilient rather than getting depressed or whatever. So now coming into, since you know what all we meant by acceptance, accepting yourself, personal growth, professional, interpersonal relationship, environmental mastery, autonomy, everything, all the 6 that Karl Rove said, I think you must have understood by now. So we again would like to emphasize healthy mind, healthy body. If you have a sound mind, you have a healthy body. But then why is it, that we women who are growing in all fields of life are not able to face this in the way that, I'm just asking this for an example. We come across a problem, we share it with the male friend of ours or the family member or the husband or whatever. It's what a big issue. Why making a big issue of it? Why is it we are not able to handle it? So like the book says, men are from Mars and women are from Venus. We have a totally different brain networking, and we are why. Are you hearing me, everybody? Suresh, can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, fine, fine. If the question is, we are differently wired. We have a different setup of thinking. Totally, we don't think the way the other person thinks because their thinking is different. The male member, I'm talking of the male community. Their thinking is different compared to our thinking. The way we handle stress is different. The way we handle a relationship is different from how a male gets to handle it. So once again, your mental health or your psychological well-being depends on your emotional intelligence, where you need to have awareness, regulation, everything. Your occupational health, whatever occupation you do, how healthy the workplace is, how healthy you're able to connect to your work, and a good interpersonal relationship. How good are you connected to the person you're working with, or whoever it could be, even your maid, it could be a person above you. What is the interpersonal relationship that you're having with the family member or with the workplace environment, everything. So you need to work on your emotional intelligence, develop your occupational health, and your interpersonal relationship. Women today, we are working in all fields, but before we were called as, gatherers. We were only plucking flowers or taking twigs to take care of the family, to run cooking and all that stuff. And men were hunters, they were gatherers. They were protectors and we were only gatherers, they were hunters. But now the situation is different. The lady runs the house, she's capable of handling the problem, she's capable of doing everything. But still, the lens of sexism is still there. And the men take an upper hand over us, saying that they are the providers or the protectors, which you will understand when I'm going to talk on the problems, mostly the mental health problem that women are facing in their life. If this is not the case, if men are going to say, not all men, I'm not saying all men are bad, we still have men who are very good, who are able to support the women, who are able to be supportive of whatever they do, be it profession or be it home, whatever it is. But coming to the men who are using this as a lens of sexism and trying to put down their wife, what I have found in my profession these days is, being in this profession, I come across a lot of couples who come to me for counseling, where I see there is a lot of marital abuse. Marital discord is happening mostly because of intimate partner violence. We've heard of violence from others, but when it is an intimate partner violence, it could be physical, it could be psychological, it could be sexual, and it could be economical. When I'm saying it could be even a financial one. He might not give the money, or he might not want her to give the money to her parents. He might insist that she does everything according to his family's requirements or whatever his mother requires. So this is intimate partner violence. I am classifying it, though it doesn't come exactly like that. With my professional practice and whatever I've come across, I'm able to categorize them in these areas. We see a lot of women in this lockdown period. A lot of study has been done, not only in Italy, not only in Spain, not only in Luxembourg, even in India. If you get to see Times of India paper 4 days before, it says there is a lot of violence in women, locked door violence happening in women. Why? Because all these days women had the ability to go out and share their problem to somebody. They could ventilate it. If they were housewife, the husband left the house, so at least there was 5 to 6 hours of peace that they had. But when it comes with this lockdown period, that they're always together, there is a lot of violence happening. We're seeing a lot of crime rate happening. In fact, there was a paper which had a research saying child abuse is more, and there are a lot of calls from various centers that the children come to complain about child abuse. It has, exactly like what Suresh is also adding a point, it has doubled. This 21 days statistics says that this lockdown is maybe beneficial that we don't get corona, but our marriage is becoming very cancerous, that there is a lot of violence. It need not be between husband and wife alone. It could be between the mother-in-law and the daughter-in-law. It could be between the father and the child. It is happening more. It could be between the mother and the daughter also. When I'm talking, that is why I'm saying it is not only intimate partner violence need not be physically connected only to the wife or the daughter. It is more of physical, psychological. When I say psychological, it is emotional. When I'm talking of this emotional point, I would like to talk one thing. See, how many of you all understand, your marriage needs to have a sacrifice and all that stuff. But please, take it from me. Don't sacrifice anything if you want to have a happy marriage. Because when you have a happy marriage, definitely you will not be having a sacrifice happening from your end alone. Because if you have a sacrifice from your end, you're not going to be open in a marriage. When there is no openness in a marriage, where is the trust in a marriage? How is it? There is so much of bitterness, right? Then what happens when you're not open in a marriage? You have resentment that the other person is not giving you the same amount of whatever you want, because you are sacrificing something, or he or she doesn't understand, and it doesn't work that way. So please do not sacrifice. When I say do not sacrifice, it is not an individual sacrifice, like a close sacrifice where you don't tell your partner, where you don't communicate. You can't sacrifice and still voice out to somebody by saying, hey, you know what, I've sacrificed this for you. That's not happening. That is why I'm saying it closes openness. Instead, you will be telling somebody, when you work on a mutual term with the person, okay, come, let's sit to do this. Let's work on this mutual agreement that we sacrifice something for the benefit of the long-term relationship. So if you start doing something and keep it close to yourself, there'll be a lot of resentment happening in yourself. So this intimate partner violence, it is also emotional. More than physical, more than sexual, I'm talking on emotional areas, because they do not understand what is needed of the wife. Why? Because as I told you, women are wired differently, men are wired differently. Their needs are different, his needs are different. So if you ask them, if you could ask this husband, what are the important factors of your marriage that you would want to categorize, or you think is important, he will write a list and she will write a list which will be totally contradictory. Or what is his primary need would be her last need. For him, it could be sexual need. For her, it could be the last need. For her, it could be more intimate talks. For him, it could be the last need. So unless there is openness, the emotional problem is going to continue, because your expectations are never going to be understood by the other person. So it is never going to be fulfilled. So you would call it as an emotional violence. My point once again here is, in this marital discord, it is not only the sexual abuse or the physical abuse or the psychological abuse. We see, more of replenishing of the love. Whatever has been given in the initial stages of marriage has not been given because the other person is taken for granted. The marriage couple, they take each other for granted, or the wife is taken for granted, and she's not being appreciated of what she's doing, or there is more of demands. You need to do it for me because you're married to me, because this is what the marriage categorizes. This is how people assume what marriage, it happens in a marriage. Coming to sexual abuse with the wife is one. Then there is an extramarital affair, which is also a part of emotional violence and sexual abuse, where the husband does not give the wife what is required for her. So the court says, when there is more, when there is a marital rape, the husband is susceptible for a crime. When he is not satisfying her also, it is a criminal proceeding. Therefore, your emotional violence could be having a marital rape or not even satisfying the wife. Then having an extramarital affair, the family justifying the extramarital affair, now posting it on the wife as the reason for the extramarital affair. If you were all right, why would he go in search of somebody? This all traumatizes the female, to handle her marriage. Then comes domestic violence. If you see in this lockdown, domestic violence has gone up. There is a study also done by SCARF where they found women are more vulnerable here in this period for stress, because there is a lot of work that they do at home. They do the work from home. They're all not working in the sense they're not sitting at home idle. They have to cook, they have to clean, they have to wash, they have to mop the flooring. And it is definitely something where you need to understand that these women need to cook in the house, where not all men are helping them, neither the children are allowed to help them. So there is a lot of domestic violence happening. There is dowry harassment. It is not only in this 21 days I'm talking about. There is a lot of dowry harassment. If you had read the paper 2-3 days before, a previous MP, a female, Dr. Mrs. Jayanti Natarajan had written, this time the violence is so high. What are we going to do? How are we going to protect the women? Then initially when the man was outside or when the female was outside, she could call somebody and say, hey, this man is hitting me. Or she could go somewhere, leave alone anywhere. She could at least go to a temple, sit, cry and come. But now there is nowhere that she could go. So she had suggested, why don't we have a code word where this girl could confront to somebody. It could be a family member or friend. It could be a very simple code word, like, saying, for an example, if it is N95 is a mask that all of us know. If I could call somebody and say, I need a normal mask, they must understand there is some problem happening. Or send me 10 packets of biscuits, some code word where the female could have, so that she could make the other person understand. These are ways where you must be able to develop a way of support even during this lockdown period, where you could help yourself being out of this dowry harassment or domestic violence, everything. Fine. Coming to, the ratio of depression and anxiety, as I told you, is 2 to 3 times more in women, because they internalize everything. Women, out of all this marital problem or depression for various reasons, they keep, internalizing everything within themselves. They don't want to open up because they feel, if I talk about my spouse, I'm giving out, the other good things of him, whatever. There's always guilt. Women always run through guilt and they subject themselves to emotional violence also. Suicide, there is a study which says women suicide or attempting suicide is more than completed suicide. Men complete suicide because there's high risk, the lethality is high in men compared to women. But whereas now the study says women in India suicide more compared to the men, so which is alarming. So let's see, why this is happening. Because before I conclude, I just want to, I know I'm running out of time. I think, Suresh, I will take just 2 to 3 minutes. Um, because, women, right from childhood. See, when I'm talking of women, it is not only the urban area. We have women in the rural area. Please think of the remote village where there are women who don't even know that they need to have a psychological well-being. Whether they have the power to think is a question. So taking all this into account, I have just classified how women right from childhood go through their trauma. If you say even before birth, it is in the rural area, not only in the rural area, please, even in the urban area, we feel families want only a male member. The child, they want a male child because they believe the child will take care of their prodigy and whatever, he'll take care of them, whatever it is. So this goes on and on. Coming to the next part, when the girl is born, how is she handled in the house? Is she given the priority? No. If it is food, the male member is given extra food. If you see an advertisement, the mother gives little milk to the girl and more milk to the boy and he pours it. Yes, it is still happening in rural areas. The boy will be given an egg, the girl will not be given an egg. Education, the boy will be given more education, whereas the girl will be sent to a corporation school, or they might even stop her from studies, ask her to work at home or go out for work to fetch money so that the brother is being able to study in a better school. This is where the rural area is functioning. Come on, is this happening only in the rural area? What is happening in the urban area? Urban area, parents have a lot of fear when it becomes a female child. They keep telling, oh, it is a girl. I don't know how I'm going to take care, because there is a lot of child abuse happening. As I told you previously, this lockdown period alone, we're getting lots of calls. If you say there are lots and lots of calls for child abuse. So who are the predators? It is none but the family. There again, the mother is not able to voice against the male member of the family. It could be the father, it could be the brother, it could be the uncle, it could be the grandfather. Why? In this lockdown period, how come children are getting abused? It's sexually abused or physically abused, whatever. Whether they're, if you see, there is another study which says child pornography watching has, in a sense, the pornography which children have watched more in this particular lockdown period. So where are we heading to? So there's a lot of, where women are not able to voice it. So children in the urban area, there is a lot of fear about child abuse and child rape, everything is happening. When the child becomes an adolescent, there is a lot of stalking. The girl needs to accept her love, otherwise the man is upset that, she did not, and throw acid over her or is willing to kill her, take her to any step. There's so much of force in love. When from the adolescent she gets into a working area, there is a lot of compromise that she needs to do on, working area also. There's a lot of sexual abuse there. During this, period of lockdown also, work is given more so that there the office worker and she has to take care of this. The well-being is also being disturbed here. Then coming on to marriage, there are a lot of compromises need to be made. If you ask me, men still hold the lens of sexism when it comes to marriage. Definitely they have lots of rules and restrictions for females. They want the female to have, if you read through all these whatever advertisements they give, a well employed or well educated, good looking, fair, beautiful, homely girl and all that stuff. What is it he's looking out for? And the mothers, if you ask me, also have a pride, forgetting they are the female themselves. When it comes to the marriage, they think the son is a commodity where he has all the priority and the female is nobody, but she's just given life by the male. There the well-being is being compromised. She needs to compromise on her occupation. Say for example, if she needs to shift from here to another place, she needs to quit her job. The man might not quit his job and join her, whereas she's asked to quit the job and join. More importantly, if there is a promotion, she cannot accept the promotion because the husband feels if she's promoted, she must be transferred elsewhere. There is still conflict. There could be 10% where it is not happening. The husband is very supportive. I am telling because I'm one among the 10%. There are still 90% that is my concern today, which is affecting the well-being of women. So the compromise that she has to do with her family, she may want to help the family with money because their father helped her. If the father is retired, she might want to give a few thousands. Then she has to take the support of the husband or permission. More than support, it is permission of the husband, who needs to ask his mother if she's okay with that and all that stuff. Only then she needs to give money, or most of the time they're not allowed. So post marriage, once again, when to have children, where to have the childbirth, whether it is here in India, if it is abroad, who has to come, whether it is her mother or his mother, or whether the girl will have to go to her mother's place, who will bear the cost, and all this stuff happens. When it is motherhood, again, after post-marriage, when it is motherhood, she has to prioritize her child more than her work, so she may have to quit the work. If she has to work, she has to divide herself between the family and the work. She's torn into pieces. The child falls sick, she has no choice but to take off because the husband might not be in a position to take off, or even if he takes off, he might not know how to handle the child or feed the child. So again, there's a problem. So work, family, and child comes priority, and she slowly starts diminishing, forgetting that she is existing. Her existence is going down. But when the child, grow up, she forgets completely that she can have something for herself. Even be it food, she serves the family and she waits to see if they're full and then she eats. Be it a chocolate, she doesn't mind that she doesn't, even if she likes the chocolate, even if she loves to go out and eat an ice cream, she doesn't want to do that because she feels, no, my children would love to do it. Beyond a point, women, when they cross an age, they start becoming guilty that they cannot think about ourselves. We were brought up that way. The Indian context, women were brought up that way, that you are living not for yourself, only for your family and only for somebody. So most of the time, the question of well-being is not only compromised, is mostly forgotten. We do not know what we want or what we like to do after a point. So then, one thing that I would like to add before I end, what do we do about this? Apart from all these 6 theory, what I would love to add on is women need to be empowered, for which education is primary and definitely profession is important. So work on your well-being, never diminish your well-being, and don't get disintegrated. So thank you all for your patient listening. And Suresh, I think you've done a wonderful job. Thank you. Hats off to you.
Thank you, ma'am, for this. We will come back again for the same link for discussion, friends. Just
yes.
the same link. Thank you, ma'am, for that.
Ma'am, you,
Nice
Yes,
presentation.
thank
ma'am,
you.
I'm
Thank you.
Selvi from
Thank you.
Government College of Education. Yeah, nice talk I have listened to. That evening I had a very beautiful session with you. All the things we can take into heart. But anyway, you are telling that we have to be empowered.